This is podcast 4, the last podcast of chapter 5 about content development. There is no set order of content development, but in most lessons you should see some extensions, both up and down, refinement tasks with cues and feedback, and application and assessment tasks. It could be that an assessment task is needed by the teacher before an extension task. As in everything in life, it depends. It depends mostly on the learner's readiness and their developmental appropriateness for doing or performing the skill or the task. As we mentioned in Chapter 2, there are 3 different kinds of motor skill content: closed skills, like a tennis serve; closed skills and like a bowling spare ball; or open skills, like a basketball dribble or a tennis forehand. Each of these categories is unique in its learning intent, and it requires a different approach when you're teaching. As in all teaching, repetition is needed and revisiting concepts is important, so that's why it's important here to talk about, again, closed skills in differing environments, and open skills. The main concept that you need to get about closed skills is that the purpose is to produce consistent, efficient performance. Every practice of a closed skill needs to be a movement routine that someone does. You need to establish the prerequisites, modify the skill and equipment to ensure success, teach the whole and then the part and then the whole whenever possible, break down the skill into parts after the whole, modify the equipment if it makes success difficult, change the conditions of practice to ensure success and build difficulty gradually, remove knowledge of results, in other words, remove the student seeing what happens as a result of their performance, like whether the basket goes in the goal or the putt goes into the cup. Modify the goal or intent to ensure success. Accuracy is required only after proficiency of force and or speed. Design the environment to elicit a response. That's environmental design. Again, that was discussed in Chapter 2. If you remember ever watching a basketball player on television going through their motor routine of shooting a free throw, you'll see that some of them dribble the ball 3 times in a row, then they spin it in their hands, and then they do the actual shooting action and the follow through. Others, I've seen a long time ago, would actually shoot the free throw, even in the pros, with 2 hands. I think that was Wilt Chamberlain that did that. But anyway, they do the same thing every single time. Closed skills in different environments, of course, have to be practiced, or the practice tasks have to start out as closed skills, but they eventually have to be practiced in different environments. But the best thing to do for closed skills in different environments is to alert the student about the different types of environments that they may encounter when they're actually applying the skill. For instance, a putt is usually done with the same swing as an approach shot to the green. It's just that the swing for the putt is a third of a backswing and 2/3 follow through after the ball is actually contacted. But an approach shot is more like half a swing before the contact and half a swing after. So because of those changing environments, they didn't have to change the swing, they had to change what parts of the swing were longer than others. With beginners, teaching them open skills, you usually have to start in a closed environment, but staying in that closed environment should be limited because of proper form and adaptability. They are eventually going to have to use those open skills in a game that's a regular game situation where they're going to have to adapt to ever-changing environments. So we have to set up those ever-changing environments for them to practice. Extensive intra-task or practice between 2 different types of skills, that type of development is needed. Progressions for open skills definitely need decision making as part of the practice when you're executing a response. It's good to mention tactics here because adding these in as a different environment is a good thing to do for open skills or differing environments. The last 4 slides of this podcast and of this chapter are talking about Dr. Rink's famous categories of game stages. Why, you might think, do we need to categorize skills into game stages? Well, it shows the content development within game situations. It also shows how to set up practice tasks at the different levels of proficiency. Stage 1 for games is a very simple stage. In other words, learners are usually able to develop control of an object. They can propel it, they can send it, they can receive it, and so on. They can dribble a ball in self-space, for example. They can hit a forehand from a toss. They can set a ball to themselves, but trying to combine skills and so on might be something that's difficult for them to do. It's important here to remember that as far as the game stages go, students are around stage 1 in some games, and in others they may be in a different stage, stage 2 or stage 3, because of their opportunity to practice and the experience they've had with those games before. At the game stage 2, the complex control of an object or combinations of skills is what happens in this stage, using skills with rule limitations, and of course also having cooperative relationships with other people. Examples at stage 2 are fielding the ball and being able to throw it, dribbling and passing to a partner, serving the ball and moving into a defensive position. Those are all more complicated skills than in stage 1. Game stage 3 is where I personally would like to see us get to more at the high school level in particular, and that is to teach beginning offensive and defensive strategies or tactics to students as they apply to net and invasion games in small-sided practice and in games. An example of a stage 3 task would be using a lead pass to a partner who's moving, or a 2 offense 1 defense soccer type of task, or 3-on-3 basketball or 3-on-2 basketball, and trying to learn how to find the open person. Stage 4, of course, is complex gameplay, where you have specialized positions in gameplay, such as in volleyball, a setter, a hitter, a blocker, and a defender. The full game, but not only the full game, and also addition of complex rules that students may not always know about. For instance, in tennis, that you can't hit a ball you can hit a ball outside of a net post and it go in the opposite court and it will still be good, even though it didn't go over the net. Some considerations using the game stages are that students do not leave one stage when they are ready for another. In other words, it's not possible to just master a particular stage, particularly in different games and activities. The most important thing here is stages 2 and 3 are the most neglected stages in progressions that we teach our students. We don't teach them about combination of skills. We don't do that in learning tasks, and we don't talk about tactics and defensive strategies. We need to do that more. More often, we go from stage 1 straight to stage 4. You can determine what skills are needed in a game by analyzing the skill and the demands of the context in which the skill is used in a game. That's the end of Podcast 4 for Chapter 5 and the end of Chapter 5.